So this is Ónix. He is a Mustang gelding that we tip trained last year that was adopted by a lady in California, and he has been with her for the past year. He is 3 years old now, and so he's come back to us to get started under saddle, and he's grown quite a bit. He's just hair under 15 hands as a 3-year-old, so he's probably going to grow a little bit more, and he's really, really pretty. His future is going to be a dressage horse, which I think he's going to be well suited for. He didn't know how to lunge, so Citro's here just kind of showing him and teaching him how to lunge. And what I want to highlight here is that he's using a really, really long rope because he wasn't sure how the horse was going to react. Like if he was going to bolt or whatever, you don't want to lose them, and you teach him how to bolt because you don't have a long enough rope. So ideally, when you are teaching a horse to lunge in the round pen, you want to have a rope that's longer than your round pen. So the radius of your rope should be longer than your round pen. So that way you don't ever lose your rope and teach the horse to get away from you. So that's just a little tidbit. Keep that in mind. Once you know that the horse respects the halter and won't bolt, you can use a smaller rope. And just with everything, when you use a tool to kind of make a horse sensitive, get him moving, using pressure, you want to desensitize them with that same tool so they're not scared of it, which is what a sitter is doing here. And so making sure that, he realizes that when there's no intention of pressure used with that flag, that the flag means nothing, and it's okay. And those flags are pretty noisy. I really like them. And so it's really good to teach your horse not to be spooky for noisy things. And you see how the sitter was kind of just letting him sniff it and check it out, being very, very interactive in his training, keeping that curiosity going so that fear doesn't really set in and learning stops. So this is a pretty curious horse, and it's good to keep fostering that. So this was kind of funny. The sitter kept rubbing him with the flag, and then Ónix kept trying to play with it. So the sitter just went ahead and let him play with it. He was just kind of encouraging this sort of play, which is fine. You have to be careful with this sort of thing, but it's fine because he's kind of not being afraid of that thing, and there's nothing wrong with including some play in training. So it's just not all work. Keeps the horse happier and more engaged and more willing to kind of be with you when it's not all pressure and work all the time. So here, Isidro is teaching him to bend, and he was really stiff and didn't really want to do it. And this bend is you're not just teaching them to kind of bend and bring their nose around, but this goes all the way through their back and their loin. And so if they're stiff, you're going to run through problems back there. And initially, he just doesn't know what he's supposed to do. So Isidro's kind of showing him, when I put pressure here, I want you to bend your head like this. And you can see Ónix has a lot of resistance in his body to that. And instead of forcing him, he's putting gentle pressure on him and letting him kind of figure it out, letting him figure the puzzle out on how to relax and release that pressure. And it helps with a type of claustrophobia too, when you put pressure on him, to yield to that pressure. And you can see Ónix gets really kind of stiff and resistant, and then when he kind of softens and yields to it, he gives him some release. And so here he's going to add the rope to it, and you can see Ónix doesn't understand what he's supposed to do. And so the sitter's just following him around. And I left quite a bit of this in, so you can see this took a while, and that's okay. Like Isidore's not getting upset. He's not forcing him. He's just putting the pressure and just following him and letting him sort this problem out to figure out where to find the release. And when he does find it, he stops moving his feet and just kind of softens all the way from his neck to his loin. Then he gets that release. And it did go on for quite a while. This video is already kind of long enough, so just to let you know that it's not something that happens fast on some horses, and it took a little while on this horse. And there's nothing wrong with that. The biggest key thing here is just not to get upset and flustered about it, to keep it, nice and low key, and you don't want the horse to think that when you put pressure to ask them to bend, that it's stressful and upsetting. No, this is a place of relaxation. So that was hard for him, and he was really hard doing it on the other side as well. And he just worked through that because he needs that to work before he can ride him. And I cut out the whole saddling procedure because you guys have seen Isidore saddle horses a bunch of times. So I don't really need to see that. And this horse had zero reaction to it. He just desensitized him with the pad first, and then threw the saddle up and down, took it off on both sides, what he would usually do. And then this was just, he cinched him up and back cinched him the first time, and he could care less, which was fantastic. He's really trusting. He's had great relationship with people since we brought him from the BLM. We got this horse at the BLM in Reno, Nevada, Palomino Valley. And he's had nothing but great experiences, so he's pretty trusting, which is, it's fun to train a horse like that. And so here he's gotten a little bit better in his lunging. He's understanding when Isidore swings that rope that he needs to yield to it. He doesn't really have a great bend yet. However, it's getting there. So I love that he walks off at a nice calm walk. When he first asked him to lunge, it doesn't go rip-roaring around, so that's kind of part of his personality. And this is the first time he's been saddled, so this is his response to the saddle, and this is all good stuff. So he asked him to trot. Isidore likes to initially, get him to move off, walk, trot, and canter while on a rope so that he can have a little bit of influence over them if they get into trouble. And this horse just handled it really, really well. I think because he was so big, he only walked and trotted him with the rope before here. He turned him loose. So this is him now loose, and because he did so good at the walk and trot on the line, and he's letting him kind of feel those stirrups hit on him and have a little bit more freedom to see, how he's dealing with that saddle being up there and that cinch and that back cinch. And this is the first time he asked him to lope, and you can see he's kind of like, okay, he's feeling it. This bucking is great. It just looks like a nice little rocking horse. There's nothing dirty going on here. So that was really good. And he came back down and recovered well. So mentally, the horse is in a really good place for this first saddle. And that little rocking crow, it was just like not much of a buck, which was great. And so he's going to ask him again to lope, and that was it. That was the only time that he bucked, except going the other way the first time. And it's not too bad of a buck. You could sit that. And then going the other way at the lope, he did a little bit, but it wasn't much. And he's been pretty fine ever since. So he just had to kind of sort out what that felt like and that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And this horse is a real thinker. So he processed that and he dealt with it and he kind of moved on, which is great. This horse would probably be a cool Liberty horse because he really kind of just has a lot of draw to him and wants to be near you. He's asking him to lope when he tells him to. And all this is just getting him stronger, more prepared that when he does that under saddle, he'll have the muscles developed to do that. He looks pretty smooth too. Super smart boy. He learned all this stuff so fast. I love how he did this so much. He just kept turning around and looking at that saddle. And I do want to caution you that, like, Isidro kept a good eye on him. If he started to try to bite that stirrup, you can't let them do that. They could hook their jaw on the stirrup and get stuck and really, really cause some major damage. So we let him sniff it because he was just sniffing it. And it quite a while later, he did try to kind of nibble at it a little bit, and then we stopped him. We didn't let him do that anymore. But this first day, if he really wanted to sniff it and check it out and see what that was all about, we kind of just fostered that curiosity. And here, this is great. So and sometimes with horses that are a little bit lower energy, you run into this problem where they kind of get a little resistant and don't want to work anymore. And plus he has that saddle on him, and we discovered some resistance. So without the saddle, he was, lunging just fine, changing direction just fine. But when we ask him to disengage and change direction, he's got to kind of rock back on his hocks a bit and lift his front end and move it over. And that requires a lot of energy. And he's a baby, he's a little tired, and he didn't really want to do that. So you don't ever want to just kind of quit on that, because you're going to end up with a bigger problem later. So this is where those little problems start, that if you don't address it and take care of it, you're going to get a big problem later and then act like, hey, I just came out of nowhere, the horse did X, Y, or Z. And you're like, nope, that wasn't out of nowhere. That started right here. So what leads after this? So this kind of resistance when he tells him to go, you see that? What comes after this, if you keep letting that happen without dealing with it, is you're going to get a horse that's rearing. So you fix it here. You just let him know that, that's not something we're going to deal with. And he's pushing him around. He's telling him to move and move those shoulders. And when he puts his hand up and put pressure on that halter to go the other way, that he'd better go and follow that pressure. And that was really good right there. That's what he's supposed to do. Supposed to put that energy and come back on the hocks, lift up that front end, and follow the pressure of that rope. That kind of resistance, putting his head up and backing up and things like that is not what we want. And you can see when he does a good job, Isidro just kind of leaves him alone, lets him trot. And he worked through this quite a bit till he could get him to go both ways without that resistance. And I left a lot of this in here so that people that are working this with their horse can realize that you need to work through that. And this is kind of what that looks like. Not everything with training is all pretty and perfect. You get problems like this. See, like that he's kind of resisting. He's like, nope, you go over, you move. And that was great. He's not beating him with it. He's not like freaking out and acting all aggressive. He's just telling him and being very, very firm in his stance that I need you to yield and move over when I ask you to. And that'll come over later when, like, say you're loose in his pen or something, and you ask him to move, he'll just move. He won't question it. He won't threaten you. He won't try to push you out of the way. He goes, oh, yes, I know. I need to move out of the way when they tell me to. That was better. Oh, he's a tired baby. And here Isidro is going to just kind of finish up making sure that he's checking all the things before he plans on the next week getting on him for the first time. So he wants to make sure that he's soft and he follows that pressure when he pulls on the rope. And he's doing a good job, and we really want those ears to stay as level as possible. So he kind of does tilt his nose a little bit in, but it's getting better. He's getting softer in that neck and that loin. And so that's working good. He's checking him with this. Is he okay when I, make some sound up there? And this horse is he's got a really kind of laid back personality. Very, very trusting, which is great to have. And he kind of pulls on that, just kind of giving him a little heads up before he's going to put his weight in those stirrups. And then that's really enough for this horse. He's had a lot in one day. We don't want to overwhelm him. We want him to stay engaged and still interested, in training and working with us. So we don't want to do too much in one day. You can see he's barely even broken a sweat there, and this is just perfect. He's kind of checking to see, does that bother him? And he doesn't really bother him at all. Yeah, this is a fun horse. He's going to be so good. I like how he turns his head a little bit and looks at him. He's just aware of what he's doing. He's pretty even on both sides. Good stuff.